Hi, I'm Nola, and today we're talking about that most iconic of Australian plants, the kangaroo paw. This clumping perennial originates from the southwestern states of Australia, and it has such a unique flower and form that it'll really pop in your garden. The rhizomes are at the base, and we have these lovely deep green strappy leaves that come up, but my favourite bit are the flowers. They're on the end of these really long stems, and they look a bit claw-like, and that's where we get the name from, kangaroo paw. The other thing with these flowers is they're full of nectar, which attracts all the wildlife to your garden. Depending on what sort of size you want, there are two different types of kangaroo paws. There are the taller ones that are slightly easier to grow because they are more adaptable to different types of soil conditions. The small ones are better suited to pots. They need a little more care than the taller ones, but it's worth it because they will flower almost continuously with that extra effort. Fortunately, when deciding on a kangaroo paw, there's a huge range to choose from. There are 12 different species of kangaroo paw. 11 of these are in the Anaxanthus genus, and they come in a huge range of colours from greens to yellows to red. But the 12th species is very distinctive. That's the Macropedia genus, and they're called the black kangaroo paws because the flowers are green and black. When you're deciding on your kangaroo paw, it's important to remember that breeders have been cultivating new varieties that are more disease resistant and have more brilliant flowers. Amongst these are some of the taller ones in the green and the yellow, but we've also got the potted ones that are a little bit shorter, only get to about 60 centimetres tall, and the colours in these are fantastic. We've got some reds, some whites, pinks, and some yellows, amongst many other new colours. Now that we've decided on the colour and size of our plants, we have to decide where we're going to plant them. For optimal growth, these plants like to be planted in either full sun or part shade. In fact, they really prefer to have at least 6 hours of direct sunlight on most days, or they tend to fall over. They can also fall over if affected by frost damage. Now let's have a bit of a chat about what soil conditions are best for kangaroo paw. Kangaroo paw like a slightly acidic soil, but they're pretty hardy and they will grow in quite a range. The thing is, it needs to be very friable soil, and the most important thing is it has to be free draining. It's the one thing with kangaroo paws, they will rot if they get too much water. But the easy way to tell whether you need to water or not is to check a couple of centimetres down, and if it's dry, you water it, and if it's not, you don't. And you can use a moisture meter to check it. Once you've chosen your plant and picked the location, it's time to get it into the ground. If you want to grow this plant from seed, be aware that most varieties won't set seed. But if you do manage to get your hands on some, it's a good idea to soak it in hot water for 2 hours, as this helps with the germination rate. After soaking the seeds, you can plant them into a damp seed raising mix. You'll need to keep it moist over the next 6 weeks or so that it'll take to germinate. And you can keep them warm with a lid. If you want to propagate a kangaroo paw, it's really easy because they've got a rhizome system. You simply remove it from the pot, and then you'd be cutting back the foliage to about 20 centimetres from the base. And then you divide up the rhizomes and you replant again into some nice potting mix and keep it moist. Doing this in springtime every couple of years will really help your kangaroo paws with healthy new growth. If you're buying the plant, consider how big the plant will be in your garden, and remember that it has a clumping grass-like habit. When planting, Dig a hole twice as wide as the size of the pot size and turn the soil over so it's nice and friable before you plant, and then water in well. Due to their resilience, planting can take place at any time between March and November each year. If getting a potted kangaroo paw, make sure you use a premium free-draining potting mix that's designed for Australian natives. Be sure to keep it watered in the hot weather, and you can use pebbles as a mulch on the top to keep the moisture in and regulate the temperature. When planting into your garden bed, a good rule of thumb is to actually read the label. The spacing will vary depending on the variety that you've chosen, and if they do get too big, you can divide them as we showed you earlier. Once the plants are planted and growing well, it's time to think about how we can maintain their health and constant growth. Despite kangaroo paws being naturally very hardy, there are a few pests and diseases that you should be aware of when you're planting them. Ink spot disease is one of the things that kangaroo paws can have a problem with. It's characterised by black spots, usually towards the base of the leaves, and it's a fungal disease. You can help to prevent it by making sure that your plants have plenty of airflow, are well watered and fertilised on a regular basis, and have lots of sunlight. If you do get ink spot, all you need to do is to trim back to the base of the plant, and all the new foliage will be ink spot free and nice and green. Another common problem with kangaroo paws is rust. Rust will look like little tiny pimples that are yellow or red or orange. It's caused again by a fungal disease, and there's a couple of ways you can get rid of it. You can use either a fungicide or some neem oil. Aphids are another problem. They're an insect that appears all year round, but they're particularly prevalent in autumn and spring. They're easy enough to get rid of though with either a systemic or a contact insecticide. Kangaroo paw can also be affected by the rotting of either the roots or the crown. You can try to avoid this happening by making sure that they get sufficient sunlight, the drainage is right, and there's a good airflow around the plants themselves. With potential problems being managed, we can now maintain our plants so that they thrive through all the seasons. In spring, your kangaroo paws will start to flower again, so we can optimise conditions for growth. This mainly involves watching out on our sunlight, our amount of water that we're giving them, and also making sure the drainage is really good. As the days get warmer, you might need to increase the amount of water that your kangaroo paws are getting. And the other thing, in early spring, it's a really good time to give them a native fertiliser. As the summer goes on, it's important to note that the flowers will start to bloom, but if you cut them off at the bottom of the stem, it will increase the number of blooms and extend the growing season. Towards the end of summer and into the cooler months, kangaroo paws will naturally die back and become more dormant. This is a perfect time to prune them back. Cut back the plants, including the leaves and the flower stems, to about 15 centimetres above the soil level. This means that the new growth in the next season will be denser, lusher and disease-free. Depending on where you live, be aware that heavy frosts can hinder flower development on these cold-sensitive plants. So there you have it. There's a suitable species for every garden size and style. So pop down to your local Bunnings and pick up one of these iconic Aussie plants.